So the first 3 Silent Hill games were really good. The Silent Hill games that came after, though, are generally considered to be not as good, and having played through some of them, I can see why. I didn't feel like doing full reviews for any of them, so instead I'm just going to take a quick look at the remaining 3 Silent Hill games for the PS2. First up, we have the final Silent Hill game developed by Team Silent, Silent Hill 4, The Room. In it, you take control of a man called Henry, who is staying in a small but reasonably nice apartment. But one day, he begins having strange nightmares, and he discovers to his alarm that the door has been chained shut from the inside. His phone and cables are cut, and to make matters worse, no matter how loud or how hard he yells or bangs on the walls, no one on the outside seems to hear, meaning he's trapped. A few days after this madness starts, he discovers a mysterious hole in his bathroom wall that leads to a series of bizarre nightmare worlds, and he must travel through them in the hopes of finally escaping the room and figuring out what's going on. The premise is frankly genius. I live in an apartment that's not too different from Henry's, and the idea of unexpectedly being trapped there with no outside communication is a genuinely creepy idea, and the game executes it very well. I also appreciate how the developers seem to realize that the first 3 games had pretty much done everything that could be done with the town of Silent Hill, and for this game instead opted for an original premise designed to evoke the spirit of Silent Hill without actually going to the town. So the premise is really good, and story-wise I'd say it's better than Silent Hill 3. But there's the matter of the gameplay, and this is sadly where Silent Hill 4 lets itself down. There are some good things. The concept of using the room as a safe haven to save and heal up in between trips to the Nightmare World is very clever, and I appreciate that in the main part of the game they finally got rid of the awkward tank controls in favor of a more sensible control scheme. But the game just doesn't have the same eerie, otherworldly sense of dread that the first 3 games captured so well. I'm not sure what it is, as it's the kind of thing that's hard to put into words. But in the first 3 games, even during the quieter, more boring parts of the game, you still felt the tension and atmosphere weighing down on you. Well, I don't really get that from Silent Hill 4. One problem is that the Nightmare Worlds aren't that interesting, especially when compared to a lot of the Nightmare Worlds in the previous games. And the game also has a number of questionable mechanics. One example are these indestructible ghosts that constantly bother you. Now, the idea of being pursued by an unstoppable foe sounds scary, and at first it is. But it needs to be handled with care, because familiarity breeds contempt, and if something starts bothering you too much, it stops being scary and just starts being annoying. Pyramid Head from Silent Hill 2 was an unstoppable foe who couldn't be killed, but he didn't show up that often, so when he did, it was a frightening surprise. These ghosts, on the other hand, show up a little too often, and their presence becomes more annoying than scary. Silent Hill 4 has a brilliant premise, but it's let down by a lackluster execution, and I just couldn't get into it. If you liked the previous Silent Hill games, I would still recommend it, as it has some neat ideas, and maybe you'll like it better than I did. And if you didn't like the previous Silent Hill games, you can go ahead and skip this one, as I'm all but certain you won't like this one either. Next up we have Silent Hill Origins. Originally developed for the PSP, it was later ported to the PS2, and that's the version I'm looking at. It's the first game not developed by Team Silent, and boy does it show. In it you play as Travis, a trucker who pretty much just gets dumped into Silent Hill and spooky stuff happens. While I have issues with Silent Hill 4, I still give it a lot of credit for trying something new and taking Silent Hill in a new direction. But Silent Hill Origins seems to have no ambition outside of just trying to do what the other games already did. There's a pathetically desperate Me Too aspect that permeates the whole thing, and there's nothing it has to offer that the original 3 games didn't already do better. On the surface it resembles a Silent Hill game, but the creative spark and otherworldly atmosphere just isn't there. Definitely one to skip. And finally we have Silent Hill Shattered Memories. Originally made for the Wii, this one was also ported to the PS2. The premise of the game is basically a reimagining of Silent Hill 1, and the starting premise actually seems pretty intriguing. Unfortunately, my copy doesn't work right, so I'm just going to have to wait until I get around to playing the Wii version before I do a full review on this one. So that's my 2 cents on the other Silent Hill games for the PS2. If you're a Silent Hill fan, give Silent Hill 4 a try, give Shattered Memories a try if you can find the Wii version, and skip Silent Hill Origins. And if you're not a Silent Hill fan, then, well, why would you play any of them? Sorry this is a shorter video, but hopefully the next one should be a bit more colossal. So what do you think? Have you played any of these games? Whatever you think, be sure to let me know in the comments below. If you like what I do, feel free to subscribe and follow me on Twitter. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.